She was screaming at me to get out, saying poor people like me had no business living there. Security was coming to drag me away when this voice cut through the chaos. "Touch my wife and you'll regret it." The entire lobby went silent, except I wasn't anyone's wife. Before I dive into this crazy story, hit that subscribe button if you love stories about entitled people getting served instant karma. Trust me, you won't want to miss what happens to this HOA queen when she messes with the wrong person. My name is Evelyn, and 6 months ago, my life was completely different. I'm a freelance graphic designer, nothing fancy, just trying to make ends meet working from my laptop. The only reason I could afford to live in the Grandview Towers, this fancy high-rise building downtown, was because my grandmother left me her small one-bedroom apartment when she passed away. It wasn't much compared to the penthouses and luxury units, but it was mine, and it meant everything to me. The building was filled with wealthy professionals, doctors, lawyers, business owners, people who wore suits that cost more than my monthly income. I kept to myself mostly, wearing my simple jeans and t-shirts, trying not to draw attention. I'd nod politely to neighbors in the elevator, but we lived in completely different worlds. There was one neighbor I'd noticed, though, Blake Sinclair. He lived in the penthouse, and I'd see him occasionally in the elevator or the lobby. Tall, always impeccably dressed, with this quiet confidence that made it obvious he was successful. We'd exchange polite nods, maybe a good morning, but that was it. I assumed he was just another wealthy businessman who probably didn't even know my name. Then there was Carol. Carol Matthews was the self-appointed queen of Grandview Towers. She was the HOA president, a blonde woman in her mid-40s who treated the building like her personal kingdom. From day one, she made it clear that she didn't think I belonged there. She'd give me these looks, you know the kind, like I was some kind of intruder who had somehow snuck past security. It started small. She'd make comments about maintaining standards during HOA meetings. She'd question whether my grandmother had really left me the apartment, asking to see paperwork. She'd complain about people who didn't fit the community aesthetic. Everyone knew she was talking about me, but no one said anything. I guess when you're dealing with someone who has that much power in your building, you keep your head down. The harassment escalated over the months. Carol would find reasons to knock on my door, claiming there were noise complaints when I hadn't made a sound. She'd question delivery drivers about packages for my apartment. She even had the audacity to suggest that maybe I should consider finding somewhere more suitable for someone in my situation. I tried to ignore her. I paid my HOA fees on time, followed all the rules, and minded my own business. But Carol was relentless. Other residents started avoiding eye contact with me in the halls. I could see the fear in their eyes. They didn't want to become Carol's next target. Everything came to a head on a Tuesday morning in late September. I had just finished a big project for a client and was feeling pretty good about life. I went down to check my mail, wearing my usual casual outfit, jeans, a simple gray t-shirt, and sneakers. Nothing fancy, but clean and presentable. I was sorting through my mail when I heard those designer heels clicking across the marble floor like a countdown to disaster. Carol appeared beside me, dressed in a cream-colored pantsuit that probably cost more than my rent, her blonde hair perfectly styled, her face twisted with that familiar look of disgust. "Excuse me," she said, her voice dripping with false politeness. "I need to see some identification." I looked up, confused. "I'm sorry, what?" "You heard me. I need to see proof that you belong in this building. We've had reports of people loitering in the mailroom." My heart started racing. We both knew this was ridiculous. She'd seen me hundreds of times over the past 6 months. "Carol, you know I live here. Unit 4B. We've talked about this before." Her voice got louder, attracting attention from other residents who were passing through the lobby. "I don't know anything of the sort. For all I know, you could be anyone off the street. This is a secure building, and I take the safety of our legitimate residents very seriously." I fumbled for my keys, showing her my key card. "Look, here's my access card. It has my name on it." She barely glanced at it. "Those can be stolen or forged." "I'm calling security." "Carol, this is ridiculous. I've lived here for 6 months. You know exactly who I am." but she was already pulling out her phone, making a big show of it for the growing crowd of onlookers. "Yes, I need security in the lobby immediately. We have a trespasser in the mailroom." I felt my face burning with embarrassment. A few residents had stopped to watch the spectacle, some recording with their phones. I could see the judgment in their eyes, and I realized that even if I proved I lived there, Carol had already won. She'd humiliated me in front of everyone. "Listen," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I understand there might be some confusion, but I can prove I live here. I can show you my lease agreement, utility bills, whatever you need." Carol's eyes gleamed with satisfaction. "Oh, I don't think that will be necessary. I'm having you removed from the premises immediately. I've already called my husband. He's a lawyer, and he's going to make sure you're prosecuted for trespassing." That's when my phone buzzed with a text. Without thinking, I pulled it out and quickly typed, "Building lobby. Need help, please." I wasn't even sure why I sent it to Blake's number. I'd gotten it a few weeks earlier when a package was mistakenly delivered to my apartment that belonged to him, and we'd exchanged numbers so he could pick it up. I guess in my panic, he was the only person I could think of who might have any influence in this building. Carol was still ranting, her voice echoing through the marble lobby. "I don't care how long you claim to have been sneaking around here. This is a respectable building for respectable people, and we simply cannot allow just anyone to waltz in here and pretend they belong." "I'm not pretending anything," I said, my voice shaking. "I live here. My grandmother lived here for 15 years before she passed away and left me this apartment." "Your grandmother?" Carol laughed, a harsh sound that made several people wince. "I've been the HOA president for 3 years, and I don't recall any grandmother. You're obviously making this up." I felt tears stinging my eyes. The security guard had arrived and was looking between Carol and me uncertainly. I could see he recognized me. He'd nodded hello plenty of times, but Carol was his boss, essentially. He looked uncomfortable but wasn't going to contradict her. "Ma'am," the security guard said quietly, "maybe we could just check the resident directory." "There's nothing to check," Carol snapped. "I want her removed immediately, and I want to know how she got past the front desk in the first place." That's when I heard the elevator ding behind us. The lobby had been filled with chatter and Carol's loud voice, but suddenly it got very quiet. I could hear footsteps, expensive leather shoes on marble, walking toward us with purpose. I turned around and saw Blake Sinclair approaching, and something about his expression made my stomach flip. He wasn't rushing, but there was an intensity in his walk that made everyone step back instinctively. He was wearing a charcoal gray suit that looked like it cost more than my car, his dark hair perfectly styled, his blue eyes focused entirely on Carol. The building manager, Mr. Peterson, appeared out of nowhere, practically jogging to keep up with Blake. "Mr. Sinclair, I wasn't expecting you. Is there anything—" Blake held up a hand, stopping him mid-sentence. His eyes never left Carol, who was still standing there with her phone in her hand, looking confused about why everyone had suddenly gotten so quiet. "What's going on here?" Blake asked, his voice calm, but with an edge that made me shiver. Carol, oblivious to the change in atmosphere, puffed up like a peacock. "Oh, perfect timing. I'm dealing with a trespassing situation. This woman has been loitering in our mailroom, claiming she lives here, but she obviously doesn't belong in a building like Grandview Towers." Blake looked at me, and for a moment, our eyes met. I saw something flash across his face, anger maybe, or recognition of something familiar. Then he looked back at Carol, and his expression went completely cold. "This woman," he said slowly, "is my wife." The lobby went dead silent. I felt my mouth fall open. Carol's face went white, then red, then white again. The security guard took a step back. Mr. Peterson looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. "You're... what?" Carol stammered. Blake moved to stand beside me, close enough that I could smell his cologne. His presence was commanding in a way I'd never experienced up close. "My wife," he repeated, his voice dangerously quiet. "And I want to know exactly why you're harassing her." I was too stunned to speak. "Wife?" We'd barely exchanged 50 words in 6 months. but something about the way he said it, the absolute certainty in his voice, made everyone in the lobby believe him instantly. Carol was scrambling now, her earlier confidence completely shattered. I had no idea. She never said... she doesn't look like... Doesn't look like what? Blake's voice could have cut glass. I just meant... She doesn't wear a ring and she's always dressed so... Carol gestured vaguely at my clothes. So what? Casually? Comfortably? Like someone who works from home and doesn't feel the need to impress people like you? Mr. Peterson stepped forward nervously. Mr. Sinclair, I'm so sorry about this misunderstanding. If we had known Mrs. Sinclair was... Mrs. Sinclair has been living in this building for 6 months, Blake interrupted. She's been paying her HOA fees, following every rule, and minding her own business. The question is why your HOA president has been making her life miserable. Carol was practically hyperventilating now. I was trying to maintain building security. I didn't know she was connected to... if I had known she was your... My what? My wife? So you only treat people with respect if they're connected to someone wealthy? Is that how the HOA operates here? I found my voice finally. Blake, you don't have to... He looked at me, and there was something in his eyes that made me stop talking. Yes, I do, he said quietly. Then louder, addressing the crowd. My wife is one of the most talented graphic designers in the city. She chooses to dress comfortably and keep a low profile because that's who she is, but that doesn't give anyone the right to treat her like she doesn't belong here. Carol was backing away now, her designer heels clicking frantically on the marble. I'm so sorry, Mr. Sinclair. This is all just a terrible misunderstanding. I was only trying to... You were trying to bully someone you thought couldn't fight back, Blake said. How many other residents have you harassed, Carol? How many other people have you made feel unwelcome in their own building? The crowd was murmuring now. I could see other residents nodding, and I realized I wasn't Carol's only victim. She'd been terrorizing people for years, but no one had ever stood up to her before. Mr. Peterson was sweating now. Mr. Sinclair, I assure you we'll conduct a full investigation into this incident. Mrs. Matthews, perhaps we should discuss this privately. Oh, we're definitely going to discuss this, Blake said. But first, I want to know exactly what Carol here said to my wife. All of it. Carol looked like she wanted to run, but there was nowhere to go. The crowd had grown larger, and everyone was staring at her. I just asked for identification. It's standard procedure. For 6 months? Because I have security footage that shows you've been harassing Evelyn for months, questioning her packages, complaining about imaginary noise violations, suggesting she should move somewhere more suitable. The crowd gasped. I had no idea Blake knew about all of that. Had he been watching, paying attention this whole time? Carol's lawyer husband chose that moment to arrive, probably responding to her earlier call. He was a short, balding man who took one look at the situation and seemed to understand immediately that his wife had messed up badly. Carol, what's going on here? He asked nervously. Your wife, Blake said, turning to face him, has been systematically harassing my wife for months. I'm considering this a hostile housing situation, and I'm prepared to take legal action. The lawyer paled. Mr. Sinclair, I'm sure this is all just a misunderstanding. Carol can be overzealous about building security, but I'm sure she never meant any harm. Overzealous? I found my voice again, anger finally overriding my shock. She's been trying to get me evicted for 6 months. She's questioned every delivery, made false noise complaints, and today she called security to have me removed from the building where I pay rent. Blake placed a protective hand on my shoulder. And now she's going to face the consequences. What happened next was like watching dominoes fall. Mr. Peterson immediately launched into damage control mode, promising a full investigation. Other residents started speaking up about their own experiences with Carol's harassment. Someone mentioned that Carol had been using HOA funds inappropriately. Another person brought up how she'd been charging excessive fees for building improvements that never seemed to happen. Carol tried to defend herself, but every word just made things worse. Her husband kept trying to apologize and minimize the situation, but Blake wasn't having it. "I want her removed from the HOA board immediately," Blake said, "and I want a full audit of the HOA finances. If I find out she's been misusing funds in addition to harassing residents, this becomes a criminal matter." Within an hour, Carol was stripped of her HOA position. Within a week, she and her husband had moved out of the building entirely. The financial audit revealed that she'd been overcharging residents and pocketing the difference for years. But that's not the end of the story. That's actually where things got really complicated. After the crowd dispersed and the immediate crisis was over, Blake and I were left standing alone in the lobby. The adrenaline was wearing off, and reality was starting to set in. "Thank you," I said quietly. "I don't know why you did that, but thank you." Blake looked at me for a long moment. "You looked terrified," he said simply. "And I've been watching Carol terrorize people in this building for months. Someone had to stop her." "But why did you say I was your wife?" He ran a hand through his hair, looking slightly embarrassed for the first time since I'd known him. Honestly, it was the first thing that came to mind that I knew would shut her up immediately. She's the type of person who only respects power and status. If I'd just said you were my friend, she would have kept pushing. I nodded, understanding the logic even as I felt a weird disappointment that it had just been a strategic lie. "The thing is," Blake continued, "my family doesn't know it was a lie." "What do you mean?" "My sister Sophia was here visiting when all this went down. She heard the whole thing. By the time I got upstairs, she'd already called my mother, who called my business partners, who called the press." My stomach dropped. The press? Someone recorded the whole confrontation and posted it online. It went viral. "Billionaire's secret wife harassed by entitled HOA president" is trending on 3 different social media platforms. I felt dizzy. "Billionaire?" Blake looked sheepish. "Yeah, about that. I should probably mention that I own Sinclair Enterprises. We do corporate consulting, real estate development, a few other things. I'm worth about $4 billion. $4 billion. With a B. I sat down heavily on one of the lobby chairs. "Evelyn, are you okay?" "Your neighbor who you've exchanged maybe 20 words with in 6 months just told the entire world that you're his wife, and now I find out you're not just wealthy, you're billionaire wealthy, and this is probably going to be all over the news, and I'm a freelance graphic designer who lives in a 1-bedroom apartment that I inherited from my grandmother." Blake sat down beside me. "When you put it like that, it does sound pretty crazy. What happens now? Do I just tell everyone it was a lie? Do you?" "Here's the thing," Blake said carefully. "My family is complicated. My mother has very strong opinions about who I should marry. My sister manages my public relations. My business partners worry about anything that might affect the company's reputation. If I tell them it was a lie right now, it becomes this huge scandal about deception and manipulation." "So what are you suggesting?" "I'm suggesting maybe we don't correct the record immediately. Maybe we let people think we've been keeping our relationship private, and we figure out how to handle this together." I stared at him. "You want me to pretend to be your wife?" "Not forever, just until the media attention dies down and we can figure out how to handle this without destroying both our reputations." It sounded insane. But then I thought about Carol's humiliated face, about how Blake had protected me when no one else would, about how my quiet life was already completely disrupted anyway. "Okay," I said, "but I have conditions." "Name them." "First, we tell the truth eventually. I'm not comfortable with lying forever. Second, your family gets to know who I really am. I won't pretend to be someone I'm not. And third, if this gets too complicated or starts hurting either of us, we end it immediately." Blake smiled, and I realized it was the first time I'd ever seen him really smile. "Deal." That was 3 months ago. What started as a simple lie to protect me from a bully has turned into the most complicated situation of my life. Blake's family was intense. His mother, Eleanor Sinclair, arrived at the building the next day wearing pearls and judgment in equal measure. She took one look at my jeans and sneakers, and I could practically see her calculating how much it would cost to make me disappear. His sister Sophia was worse. She immediately suspected something was off and started interrogating me like I was some kind of con artist. "So you've been secretly married to my brother for how long exactly?" And somehow none of us knew about it? How convenient that this all comes out right when you need protecting from the HOA. The media attention was overwhelming. Photographers camped outside the building. My phone rang constantly with interview requests. Someone found my freelance portfolio online, and suddenly I had more work offers than I could handle, all from people who wanted to hire the billionaire's secret wife. Blake handled it all with the kind of calm professionalism that I guess comes with being worth $4 billion. He hired security for me, helped me set up a better home office, and shielded me from the worst of the media circus. But the weirdest part was how natural it started to feel. We'd have dinner together to maintain appearances, and I'd find myself actually enjoying his company. He was funny in a dry, subtle way that I hadn't expected. He was incredibly smart, but not condescending about it, and he genuinely cared about people. I saw how he treated the building staff, his employees, even strangers on the street. The fake relationship started feeling less fake. That's when things got really complicated. Carol, it turned out, didn't go quietly. After she moved out of the building, she started her own investigation into Blake and me. She hired a private detective, dug through social media, questioned former neighbors. She was determined to prove that our marriage was fake and somehow use that to get her revenge. She found out that Blake and I had barely known each other before the incident. She found out about my grandmother's apartment, about my financial situation, about how different our backgrounds were. She put together a whole presentation about how I was obviously a gold digger who had manipulated Blake into protecting me. She started shopping this story to gossip magazines and social media influencers. She appeared on a podcast called Truth Seekers, where she laid out her entire case about how the billionaire and the poor girl couldn't possibly be in love, and how I was obviously running some kind of con. Blake's mother heard the podcast and called an emergency family meeting. The whole Sinclair clan descended on Blake's penthouse like a swarm of well-dressed locusts. Eleanor, Sophia, Blake's uncle Harrison, who managed the family trust, 2 family lawyers, and a public relations specialist. I wasn't invited to this meeting, but I could hear voices through the ceiling of my apartment. Lots of angry voices. Blake came down to my apartment around midnight, looking exhausted. "How bad?" I asked. "They want you gone," he said bluntly. "They're offering you $5 million to disappear quietly. They've already drafted a non-disclosure agreement." I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. "And what do you want?" Blake was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "I want to tell them the truth." "Which truth?" "All of it. That I lied to protect you, that we barely knew each other, that we've gotten to know each other over these past few months, and that somewhere along the way I started falling in love with you for real." My heart stopped. "Blake, I know this is crazy. I know we started this whole thing as a fake relationship to deal with a crisis. But Evelyn, these past 3 months have been the happiest I've been in years. You're smart and funny and talented, and you call me out on my bullshit, and you don't care about my money. When Carol was attacking you, I didn't just see someone who needed help. I saw someone worth protecting." I felt tears starting. "This is so complicated." "I know, and if you want to take the money and walk away, I understand. My family will probably never fully accept you. The media will always be invasive. Carol will probably keep trying to prove we're frauds. Your life will never be simple again. And if I don't walk away?" "Then we tell everyone the truth. The real truth. That we started as strangers, that I lied to protect you, and that somehow we fell in love in the middle of this crazy situation. We deal with whatever consequences come from that together." I thought about my quiet life before all this started. I thought about my simple apartment and my freelance work and how uncomplicated everything used to be. Then I thought about the past 3 months, about Blake bringing me coffee when I was working late, about how he listened when I talked about my projects, about how he made me laugh, about how safe I felt with him, about how he'd stood up for me when no one else would. "Okay," I said. "Let's tell the truth." The press conference was surreal. Blake, dressed in his best suit, standing behind a podium in the conference room of his company's headquarters, me beside him in a dress that Sophia had insisted I buy for the occasion. Cameras flashing, reporters shouting questions. Blake told the whole story. How he'd lied to protect me from Carol's harassment. How we'd agreed to maintain the fiction temporarily. How we'd genuinely gotten to know each other and fallen in love over the past 3 months. I take full responsibility for the deception, he said. I lied to protect someone who was being bullied, and then we both got caught up in circumstances beyond our control. But I want to be clear about one thing. My feelings for Evelyn are completely real. The questions came fast and hard. Was this all a publicity stunt? Was I after his money? How could we expect people to believe we'd fallen in love in 3 months? I answered as honestly as I could. Yes, it started as a lie. Yes, we barely knew each other at first. Yes, it was crazy and complicated and not how normal relationships work. But sometimes, I said, looking directly into the camera, the most unexpected things turn out to be the most real. Blake could have ignored what was happening to me. He could have let Carol continue her harassment. Instead, he stood up for someone he barely knew, and somehow that moment of protection turned into something neither of us expected. The public reaction was mixed. Some people thought it was the most romantic story they'd ever heard. Others thought we were both con artists running an elaborate scam. Social media exploded with hashtags like #FakeLove and #ModernFairyTale. Carol appeared on 3 more podcasts and 2 morning shows, insisting that she'd been right all along and that we were both liars. She started a blog called The Truth About the Sinclairs, where she posted daily updates about her investigation into our relationship. Blake's family eventually came around, sort of. Eleanor still acted like I was a social climbing interloper, but she stopped actively trying to sabotage us. Sophia actually became an ally, helping me navigate the social events and media obligations that came with dating a billionaire. The building became a completely different place after Carol left. The new HOA president, a retired teacher named Mrs. Chen, actually cared about making it a welcoming community. Residents started talking to each other in the elevators. We organized building-wide events. People began looking out for each other instead of looking down on each other. As for Blake and me, well, it turns out that falling in love with someone in the middle of a media circus is complicated but not impossible. We had to learn everything about each other while the whole world was watching. We had our first real fight in front of paparazzi. Our first vacation together was documented by 3 different gossip magazines. But we also had quiet moments. Late-night conversations in his penthouse or my little apartment, Saturday mornings drinking coffee and reading the newspaper together, him helping me with client presentations, me helping him pick out birthday presents for his nieces. The lie that started everything became the truth. We really did fall in love. We really are together. And yes, we're talking about getting married for real this time. Carol is still out there somewhere, probably planning her next expose about how we're all frauds. The media still follows us around occasionally. Blake's mother still makes pointed comments about my background, but none of that matters anymore. Sometimes the most unexpected protection leads to the most real love. Sometimes standing up for someone you barely know changes everything. And sometimes the biggest lies lead to the biggest truths. Who would have thought a protective lie could create such drama? Would you have done the same thing Blake did? Hit that like button if you think he was right to protect me, and subscribe for more stories where simple moments change everything. Comment below. Have you ever told a lie that got way out of hand? I read every single comment, and trust me, after living through this crazy story, I love hearing about other people's unexpected plot twists in life.